My wife mocked my salary in front of her friends. After I paid her debts, so I quit my job, left her, and she's still trying to find me. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I thought marrying Claire meant I'd never face life alone again. When I first met her, I was 25, working night shifts as a technician and trying to save enough money to move out of my shared apartment. Claire walked into my life like she was born from one of my daydreams. Ambitious, magnetic. The kind of woman who made you believe that love and success could actually coexist. We met at a friend's birthday dinner. She was sitting across the table, talking about her plans to start her own design business, and the way her eyes lit up when she spoke. It just pulled me in. Later that night, she joked, "You look like someone who works too hard and smiles too little." I laughed, and she grinned like she'd cracked a code. From that moment on, everything between us felt effortless. We were both broke but optimistic, surviving on cheap takeout and big dreams. I'd pick her up from her part-time marketing job, and we'd sit in my old car for hours talking about the future we'd build. Our own place, shared savings, maybe even a business together. She'd squeeze my hand and say, "We'll get there, babe. Just wait." I took extra shifts at work to speed things up, and when we finally signed the lease for our first tiny apartment, she cried. We painted the walls ourselves, terrible streaks everywhere, but she said it made the place ours. She'd hum while unpacking boxes, and I remember thinking, this is what love is supposed to feel like. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the future. I believed in us, completely. But looking back now, maybe I was just building something alone while convincing myself we were in it together. After we got married, life started to change in ways I didn't notice right away. At first, it was little things. Claire insisting we needed better furniture or nicer clothes for dinner outings. I thought it was normal. We were newlyweds trying to find our rhythm. But soon, her tone shifted from, "We'll make it together," to, "You need to make more." One night, she came home from meeting her old college friends, all dressed up and glowing with confidence. Over dinner, she said, "You know, Melissa's husband just got promoted. They're already planning a Europe trip." She smiled, but I could feel the comparison burning behind her words. I forced a grin and said, "That's great for them, but we'll get there too." Claire only sighed, swirling her wine. "I just don't want to feel like I'm settling." That word, settling, hit like a punch I wasn't ready for. Still, I tried to shake it off. I kept working longer hours, doing side gigs to keep up with bills and her growing wish list. Every paycheck went to something. Decor upgrades, weekend getaways, her new business logo design. When I asked if we could slow down a bit, she laughed softly and said, "You're supposed to be the man, right? You'll figure it out." There were moments I'd catch her scrolling through social media, staring at influencers with big houses and matching cars. I'd reach out, touch her hand, and she'd pull away, muttering, "Don't worry. We'll get there, just not like this." That night, lying next to her in the dark, I realized she was drifting somewhere I couldn't reach, a world built on appearances and validation. I kept telling myself it was just stress, just a phase. But somewhere deep down, I could already feel the ground starting to crack beneath us. It happened on a quiet Tuesday night. I was cooking dinner, cheap pasta and garlic bread, when my phone buzzed. The number was unknown, and the voice on the other end asked, "Is this Claire's husband?" "We're calling regarding her overdue balance." I froze. "What balance?" The man politely explained. Credit cards, late payments, collection notices. My stomach sank as he listed numbers that didn't sound real. When I hung up, I just stood there in the kitchen, the sauce burning, my mind spinning. That night, when Claire came home, I didn't yell. I just asked, "Is there something you need to tell me?" Her eyes darted away and she sighed, sitting on the couch like she'd rehearsed this. "It's not a big deal," she said. "Just some old debt from before we got married. I didn't want to stress you out, but it was a big deal. Tens of thousands big. Designer clothes, luxury handbags, business investments that never went anywhere." I remember pacing, running my hands through my hair, whispering, "Why didn't you just tell me?" Claire rolled her eyes. "Because I knew you'd react like this." I was handling it, but she wasn't. The payments were months behind, and now collectors were calling. I should have been angry, but all I felt was tired. I sat beside her, took her hand, and said, "We'll fix it. I'll take care of it." And I did. I sold my motorcycle, the one my dad left me, and picked up extra shifts. Every dollar I had went toward her past mistakes. Claire thanked me once, half-heartedly, before asking if I could cover her next credit installment, too. I told myself love meant sacrifice. But as I watched her scroll through online stores that same night, smiling like nothing had happened, a quiet voice in my head whispered, "This isn't partnership. This is servitude." Once the debt was finally cleared, I thought we'd finally catch a break. But instead of gratitude, Claire became different. It started with her friends. Women from her new networking circle who drove imported cars and posted pictures of brunches with captions like "Boss Life." Claire began dressing like them, talking like them, living like she'd been part of their world all along. At first, I didn't mind. She deserved to feel good after the stress of paying everything off. But soon, the way she looked at me started to change. When I came home in my oil-stained work shirt, she'd wrinkle her nose slightly and say, "Maybe you should start dressing better. My friends think you're cute, but a little rugged." She began inviting me to dinners with her new crowd. Every time I felt out of place. They'd talk about vacations, stocks, and designer brands I couldn't even pronounce. I'd smile, nod, and stay quiet while Claire laughed loudly at their jokes. One night, someone asked her how she managed her finances so well after launching her business. She smirked and said, "Well, I just have good instincts and good luck." I waited for her to glance at me, to acknowledge everything I'd done, but she never did. I was just invisible. After those dinners, she'd glow with pride, scrolling through photos they took together. I once said, "You never used to care about showing off." She didn't even look up, just replied, "It's called branding, babe. Maybe if you understood that, you'd earn more." That stung. Not because of what she said, but because of how easily she said it. The woman who used to celebrate small victories with me now measured worth in Instagram likes. That night, as she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering when my wife turned into someone who'd rather impress strangers than stand beside me. It was a Friday night, one of those gatherings Claire lived for. She'd been buzzing all week about hosting her friends at a high-end restaurant downtown. I didn't really want to go. I was exhausted from work, but she insisted. "Please, just try to look a little more polished this time," she said, smoothing out my collar before we left. The restaurant was all glass walls and dim lights, the kind of place that made you feel poor just walking in. Claire looked stunning in a red dress, and for a moment I remembered why I fell for her. But that feeling disappeared the second her friends arrived. They laughed too loud, ordered expensive cocktails, and started gossiping about whose husband made what. Then one of them turned to me and asked with a smirk, "So, what do you do, exactly?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Claire cut me off. "Oh, he's just a technician," she said, laughing. "He pays the bills, not the dreams." Her friends burst out laughing. I just sat there, my heart pounding in my ears. Claire didn't even look at me. She was too busy enjoying the attention. When the waiter came around, I muttered something about stepping outside and left the table. I stood by the parking lot, staring at my reflection in the glass, trying to swallow the humiliation. I'd worked myself to the bone for this woman, paid her debts, sacrificed sleep, and believed in her dreams, and she'd just turned me into her punchline. When I got back, she acted like nothing happened. "You okay?" she asked casually. I nodded, silent. She smiled and whispered, "Learn to laugh at yourself, babe. Don't make it awkward." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not a loud break, but a quiet one. The kind that doesn't heal. After that dinner, something in me shut down. I stopped trying to talk to her, stopped defending myself, stopped explaining. Silence became my safest weapon, because every time I spoke, she found a way to twist my words into proof that I was too emotional or too sensitive. The mornings became robotic. I'd wake up before her, get ready for work, and leave quietly. When I came home, she'd be scrolling through her phone, laughing at messages I wasn't part of. Sometimes she'd say, "You've been really moody lately. Maybe you should work on your confidence." And I'd just nod, too tired to argue. At work, my coworkers noticed. My friend Mark pulled me aside one day and said, "Man, you look like you're carrying a mountain. You sure everything's okay at home?" I forced a laugh and told him I was fine, but I wasn't. The truth was, I felt like a ghost living in my own marriage. At night, I started journaling. Just lines, scattered thoughts, little confessions I couldn't say out loud. She doesn't see me anymore. I think she's ashamed of me. Why do I keep trying? I'd sit on the couch while she talked on speakerphone with her friends, bragging about her life, her success, her perfect marriage. The words stung, because they weren't ours, they were hers. Then one night, as I was paying some bills online, I noticed something strange. One of her business accounts showed deposits that didn't match what she'd told me she earned. My gut tightened. I clicked through emails and invoices, and that's when I saw it. Messages from a man I didn't know. The tone was personal, and the amounts he'd sent her weren't small. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Something was very, very wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I sat there staring at the glow of the laptop, scrolling through every message, every receipt, every lie. The man's name was Robert. He called her my muse, told her he was so proud of the woman she'd become, and sent money regularly, thousands at a time. The subject lines on some emails made me sick. For our plans. Next trip. You deserve luxury. The worst part? She'd saved his name in her phone as Client R. Client around 3 a.m. She stirred in bed and mumbled, "Come sleep, babe." Her voice was so soft, so familiar, that for a second I almost believed she was still the same woman I married. But that illusion shattered as soon as I looked at the open inbox again. The next day, I watched her get ready. Perfect hair, perfect perfume, that same red lipstick she wore the night she mocked me. She kissed my cheek and said, "Don't forget to transfer the rent later." Then she left, humming like nothing in the world could touch her. I sat there, numb. Every memory, every sacrifice, every sleepless night spent paying off her debts, it all collapsed into this sharp, hollow truth. She'd been living a double life. But instead of confronting her, I did something unexpected. I went quiet, dead quiet. I backed up every email, every message, every payment receipt. I started putting cash aside, slowly, secretly. At work, I called in a few favors. Friends who could help me disappear if I ever needed to. Each night, when she came home bragging about business meetings, I just smiled and nodded. She had no idea that her biggest supporter had finally stopped being blind. That night, as she slept beside me, I whispered to myself, "Let her think she's winning. She has no idea what's coming." A few days later, she decided to host another dinner, this time at our house. I didn't want to do it, but she insisted, saying, "It'll be good for appearances. Don't just sit there being invisible." The irony nearly made me laugh. I cooked, cleaned, set the table, all while pretending I didn't know she was using another man's money to fund her new lifestyle. Her friends arrived in clouds of perfume and fake laughter. I stayed polite, quiet, just like always. Halfway through dinner, one of them joked, "Claire, you're killing it lately. What's your secret?" She grinned, swirling her wine. "Hard work and vision," she said, then added with a smirk, "and a husband who doesn't get in the way." They laughed again, and just like before, I sat there swallowing the humiliation. But this time, I didn't look away. I stared at her, really looked at her. The arrogance, the vanity, the emptiness behind that smile. That was the moment I knew I didn't love this woman anymore. I pitied her. When everyone left, I started washing the dishes. Claire came up behind me, still tipsy, and said, "You didn't have to be so quiet. You make things awkward when you just sit there." I turned off the water, wiped my hands, and asked softly, "Do you even hear yourself anymore?" She frowned. "Don't start, okay? You always twist everything into drama." I looked at her, really looked, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a hollow calm. That's when I realized the only way to win was to walk away completely. The next morning, before she woke up, I logged into my work account, sent in my resignation, and transferred my savings into a new bank. Then I stood in the doorway, looking at her sleeping peacefully under those silk sheets I paid for, and thought, "You'll never see me again." The day I left, I didn't take much, just a duffel bag, some cash, and my tools. Everything else I left behind, including the life I built for her. I wrote a short note and placed it on the kitchen counter. It said, "You can keep the image. I'm taking back my peace. No anger. No goodbye. Just truth." Before sunrise, I drove out of the city. The roads were empty, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight lifting off my chest. I didn't have a plan, just distance. I drove until the skyline disappeared in my rearview mirror and kept going until my phone lost signal. I stopped at a small motel off the highway and slept for 12 straight hours. When I woke up, there were missed calls, 15, then 30, then 50. All from Claire. No messages, just calls. Then a few texts. "Where are you? This isn't funny. Come home." I deleted them all. I didn't want explanations. I didn't want closure. She'd already said everything she needed to when she laughed at me in front of her friends. Over the next few weeks, I found a small workshop job in a rural town fixing farm equipment. The pay was simple, the people kind, the silence healing. I started sleeping through the night again. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't trying to be enough for someone who would never see me. Every now and then, I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, half expecting one of her messages. But then I'd remember. She only ever reached out when she needed something. And now, for once in my life, I had nothing left for her to take. Weeks turned into months, and the silence I'd once feared became my closest ally. I didn't check social media, but one night, curiosity got the best of me. I opened a new account and searched her name. What I saw was chaos wrapped in filters. Claire's posts had changed, from polished luxury to frantic positivity. Gone were the dinners, the travel shots, the designer tags. Her captions read like cries for attention. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. People always leave when you need them most. It was almost poetic. She was finally getting a taste of the loneliness she used to make me feel every single day. Then, through an old coworker, I learned what had really happened. The man, Robert, had cut her off completely after discovering she was married. Her business collapsed when her clients found out her funding wasn't clean. The women she called friends stopped answering her calls once the free drinks and expensive dinners ended. Claire was alone, buried in debts she couldn't talk her way out of. Meanwhile, I had built something small but honest. My boss let me use part of the workshop to start my own side repairs business. Every greasy bolt and late-night fix felt like rebuilding myself piece by piece. There was peace in the simplicity, work, food, rest. No judgment, no pretense, no lies. But one night, as I was closing up the shop, a familiar car pulled up. My stomach dropped. It was her. Claire stepped out, her once perfect posture deflated, her eyes tired. She looked smaller, fragile, like someone life had finally caught up to. She whispered, "I've been looking for you. Please, just talk to me." For a moment, the part of me that once loved her almost answered. But then I remembered every laugh, every lie, every humiliation. So I turned off the lights and walked away. After that night at the shop, I didn't see her again in person. But a few weeks later, an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line just said, "Please read." For a long moment, I hovered over it, debating whether to open it. Curiosity won. It started with, "You were the only person who ever believed in me." The rest of the message spilled like a confession, how everything fell apart after I left, how she realized she'd lost the only man who truly cared. She said she'd been pressured by her friends to act like she was above me, that she never meant to hurt me, that the money from Robert was just help. It was classic Claire, painting herself as misunderstood, not guilty. She ended it with a single line. "I'm not asking you to come back. I just need to know you forgive me." I sat there staring at the screen for what felt like hours. I didn't feel the rage I expected. Just emptiness. Forgiveness? She'd mocked my sacrifices, stolen my peace, and used me as her stepping stone. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give. It was hers to earn. And she never would. I drafted a reply once, just a single sentence. "I hope you find the version of yourself you kept pretending to be." But I never sent it. Instead, I deleted her email and blocked the address. That night, I stepped outside and looked up at the stars. The air was cold, clean. The kind of quiet that used to feel unbearable now felt like home. For the first time, I realized I didn't need her apology to move on. The real closure wasn't her words. It was my silence. And from that silence, something new began to grow. It's been almost a year since I walked away from that life, and I barely recognize the man I used to be. I still wake up early, still smell the same engine oil on my hands every day, but now it feels different. Peaceful. Purposeful. After months of saving, I rented a small garage on the edge of a town and turned it into my own repair shop. The sign outside reads True Fix Mechanics. Nothing fancy, just a name that means something honest. Some days are slow, some are busy, but every single one feels real. I don't dread going home anymore because home isn't a battlefield now. It's mine. A quiet apartment with tools on the counter, a few plants by the window, and silence that doesn't hurt. Sometimes new customers come in. Couples, young guys starting out, and I catch pieces of my old self in them. The eager provider, the believer, the man who thought love alone could fix someone broken. I don't judge them. I just hope they learn sooner than I did that real partnership doesn't demand your worth. It protects it. Every once in a while, I think of Claire. Not with anger, not even sadness, just distant curiosity. I wonder if she ever rebuilt anything genuine, or if she's still chasing the image that destroyed her. But I don't check. That chapter is done. The last thing I wrote in my journal before closing it for good was simple. Maybe leaving wasn't running away. Maybe it was the first time I chose myself. Now, when I lock up the shop each night and the city lights fade behind me, I smile knowing I finally understand what peace feels like. It isn't loud. It isn't grand. It's quiet, steady, and completely mine. And for the first time in my life, that's enough.